The third Cowboys report of the day is made possible by Rhone. We'll tell you all about them later on in today's show. But as a reminder, 20% off when you use code ChatSports over at Rhone.com/chatsports. The NFL trade deadline is less than 24 hours away. The Cowboys are 3-5. Dak Prescott is going to miss at least a few weeks, maybe more, as they get ready to make decisions on do they buy, do they sell, do they hold. I have my answer, but I want to hear from you guys in the comments too. What should Dallas do at this year's NFL trade deadline? B for buy, go add talent, try to save the season somehow, some way. S for sell, move on from various pieces. H for hold and not really do anything. Vote in the comments of today's video. I think the answer is sell. And I was going to say that regardless of the Dak, if the Dak Prescott injury was non-existent, if you didn't get hurt, you're 3-5. Your season is cooked. It's just not going to work. There's just no way. It requires too many miracles from too many different things of your team to even make a run. So you should focus on two different types of players that exist right now on this Dallas Cowboys roster. Player number one is probably going to be here in 2025. They're under contract. You want them back. They're young. They've been paid. Whatever it is, you keep those guys. The guys not here in 2025, you owe it to your long-term team building, which is the bigger priority than doing right by various coaches or players. You should listen to trades on all of those guys. I think there are three different types of players kind of within that two-group bucket. The first group, or that second bucket, I should say, guys who aren't going to be here, have value in a trade. Players that I think you could get something back for them. Let's break down a couple of these guys. First up is Zack Martin. And it seems borderline sacrilegious, but it also makes some sense. Look, Martin is not the same player he was in his prime. I've actually been pretty disappointed by him. There have been multiple games this year where if he wasn't the worst offensive lineman, he was your second worst offensive lineman. And that can't happen for Zack Martin. Now, you could get a pick back for him. I still believe that. And you can let him ring chase. You can send him to insert contender here. Take your day 3 draft pick that you're not going to get as a comp pick because he's going to be traded. Plus, if you move on from guys on one-year deals, you don't get the BS of, we got to preserve our comp picks. Get the picks now and then go spend money in free agency. But there's one massive issue with the Zack Martin situation that hasn't really been mentioned very much. The Zack Martin contract is built to do a post-June 1st retirement this upcoming offseason. It's either extend him and give him some more money or allow him to retire. And it allows you to spread that money out over 2 years. The Cowboys restructured his deal this season knowing that was going to be the plan. Trading Zack Martin right now adds $15.81 million in dead cap next year. That's not really feasible with the way his deal is set up. It's just not viable. It doesn't make sense. You would rather spread that out over 2 years into the future. You have to consider that. So would you trade Zack Martin? Y for yes, N for no. Go vote the pinned comment of today's video, which the ad comes here on YouTube. Let's go to the defensive line. Osa Odighizuwa. He hasn't been as great this year, or even as good. Maybe is better terminology there. But he is a cheap rental for a contender. And a contender might be able to get a comp pick back that, in theory, you shouldn't be worried about because you're not going to worry about getting them back because you're going to spend money. That's how you should be approaching it. Osa's numbers are down this year. There's nowhere. I thought he was better against the Falcons. That's not a great interior offensive line, but he was better. He is also by far your only close to good, let's put it that way, defensive lineman. Trying very hard to be nice because we all know what I mean by Mozzie Smith and Carlos Watkins and Linval Joseph. They're not good football players, I'm sorry. So if you move Osa, you're selling. Like you're punting on the year. It's not a bad thing because you're backed up on 4th and 15 at your own 10. Maybe you should be punting. I think that's probably a good philosophy to have right now if you are the Cowboys. If you're not going to pay a guy like Osa, you should trade him now. Get that comp. Don't worry about the comp pick. Get the pick now so you have extra assets to reload this offseason. Now, today's show, as mentioned, is made possible by Rhone. I am rocking one of their polos from the Commuter Collection because starchy, stiff workwear is not optimal when you need to endure your busiest, most important days, like the NFL trade deadline. With our Commuter Collection, your clothing looks professional, performs like activewear, and feels like total comfort. They have premium pieces to elevate every occasion. Pants, dress shirts, quarter zips, polos, blazers, all boosted with functional performance properties. Their signature fabrics stretch in every direction. They breathe and they fight odor and the elements and effortlessly work together. So you stay calm and collected even when life takes unexpected turns. Whether it's something at the office or your commute home, Rhone has you covered. The Commuter Collection can get you through any workday and straight into whatever comes next. Head to Rhone.com/chatsports and use code CHATSPORTS. Save 20% off your entire order. That's 20% off your entire order when you go to RHONE.com/chatsports and use code CHATSPORTS. It's time to embody your most confident self. Rhone's premium performance clothing is made to move you. Use code CHATSPORTS to save 20% off at Rhone.com/chatsports. Link will be in the comments section and the description of today's show. Let's move to Chauncey Golston here. Honestly, I think he's been pretty impressive. Carl Lawson flashed a bit as well, who could also maybe be on this list, but he had kind of one good game. I doubt there's much trade value there. I am actually very much open to re-signing Chauncey Golston this offseason. He is one of the very few from that draft class that I think actually does make some sense of re-signing. Several of them already off the team, obviously. But this is me kind of galaxy braining it. What's stopping you from getting a day 3 pick for Chauncey Golston right now and then saying, hey, buddy, you want to come back in free agency? What's to stop you? Who cares if that's the route you want to go down? You should get Micah Parsons back this week. At some point, you'll get Marshawn Nealon back. We'll actually talk about Tank Lawrence in a little bit. It also frees up a spot for a guy coming off IR. I'm not opposed to it, although I have been impressed enough that I can bring back Golston as like my 5th or 4th defensive end next season. Next up is Damone Clark, who is just not playing right now for the Cowboys. He is very clearly linebacker 4. He is buried on this depth chart behind DeMarvion Overshown, who I've been impressed by. Eric Kendricks, hint, we'll get to him. Maurice Leafau, and then it's Damone Clark. Okay. Yeah, I don't need a 4th linebacker. I can find that guy on day 3 of the draft again. I don't know if I can get a pick back, but the overall draft pedigree, he only fell because of injuries. Maybe someone has enough interest to give me a day 3 pick for him. Or a guy that might not be on my team this time next year anyway. Eric Kendricks, also worth having a conversation about here. Look, this is a Mike Zimmer guy. He chose Zimmer over San Francisco. You wonder if he's maybe having some regrets. I think the Niners have not been pleased with Devondre Campbell necessarily either. He's a longtime vet, smart football player, it's a stopgap option. And he's not the same guy in coverage. You can tell a step has been lost. Now, he's still putting up 10 tackles a game. I think his run defense would look better if your front 4 wasn't so bad in general. But, this is not a long-term piece. So if someone says, hey, do you want a 6th-round pick for Eric Kendricks? Sure. That's not a lot, but what does another half season of Eric Kendricks really get me? That doesn't really mean anything to me. And I want to spend money and not worry about comp picks in free agency. Jourdan Lewis. Look, he's actually played really well this year. Relative to expectations, it's like Brandon Aubrey, maybe Jalen Tolbert, Rico Dowdle, I think maybe Chauncey Golston, and Jourdan Lewis are like the guys I think that have exceeded expectations. Lewis has been a good run defender. He's been one of the only guys that seems to give a crap publicly in the media. One of the few guys on your team right now. The locker room presence would probably be missed. Season's over anyway. I don't fully believe in a massive impact for 2025 if the 2024 locker room gets a little bit dicey, because a lot of those guys aren't going to be here, including the coaching staff in the next season. So I'm okay shopping him if I get a good pick back or a decent pick back. Next up in the Cowboys Trade Candidates section is players who probably don't have any value. Guys that you might want to trade. I don't disagree, but I think you'd have a hard time getting something back for them. Before we get to that list, name a player who you want the Dallas Cowboys to trade. Let me know in the comments of today's show. I'm going to group 2 players together here, and you know who it's going to be. It's the safeties. It's Malik Hooker and Donovan Wilson. Guys that I don't think are going to be back with your team anyway next season. They feel like obvious cut candidates. I would love to trade them. I don't know who wants 28 or 6 right now. Malik Hooker has not played well. He has not been in great positions. They also kind of benched him at one point to put Israel Mukwama out there and kept Donovan Wilson out, which was interesting. Hooker's only owed $1 million the rest of the season. It's not that bad. He's probably a little bit more viable right now than Donovan Wilson is. And don't tell me Dan Quinn. They're fine at safety. If it's tackle, different conversation. But Wilson has not been good this year. He was better against the Falcons. Not good enough necessarily. You owe him about $3 million the rest of the season. Is he really worth that right now? Kind of don't think so. I will mention Ezekiel Elliott, just for you Zeke truthers out there who want to who say the Cowboys should let Zeke go somewhere where he can play. Where is he going to play? I am dead serious right now. Who wants Ezekiel Elliott? Ain't nobody trading, for even though he's fairly cheap, it's about the vet minimum, for a guy that's got 48 carries for 149 yards, who just got told to stay home because of disciplinary issues. Ain't nobody trading for that guy. Cut him, but that's a different conversation. So I don't think anyone wants Zeke. I think anyone wants Zeke in the offseason. That's how it goes. We will be live for this year's NFL trade deadline, so do not miss out. Hit that sub button. YouTube.com/@CowboysTV. And, of course, there's Trey Lance here. I'm not opposed to seeing Trey Lance play because I think his mobility actually gives you some intriguing options that Cooper Rush certainly does not have, and Dak Prescott does not have either. Make no mistake about it. He might get a shot to play this year, and I think there's zero trade interest in him anyway. As strange as it might sound, I think the Dak Prescott injury makes it less likely the Cowboys would consider shopping Trey Lance because, well, they don't have a fourth quarterback on the team. There's nobody else. Would not be shocked if the Cowboys added one to the practice squad in the coming days, but that depends on how long Dak's really going to be out. I do wonder if this is more of like, it's closer to a month plus than it is weeks. It's like 2 months than it is a month, which is concerning. But Lance, no one wants him, and you're going to have him as your backup until you move to him if Rush does not win you a bunch of games somehow. The final group here are what I'm calling toss-ups. Guys that I think have some trade value, but maybe you don't want to trade them. They're under contract for next year. You don't have to move on from them. There's a big but involved with all of these guys. Now, many of you, I'm sure, would like to trade away Terrence Steele. You can do that. You don't really save a lot of money because you already restructured his base salary. That makes him pretty cheap, though. I do think there would be some semblance of interest in a starting caliber right tackle, even if it is a very low-end starting caliber right tackle at the moment. He's been solid in the run game. I thought he was actually much better against the Falcons. There's still, the issue with Terrence Steele is there's still 2 to 3 times a game. It's like, bro, what are you doing out there? The real issue is when it becomes 4 to 5 to 6, which did happen against the Niners and Lions, by the way. If you can just dial that back down to a couple, things look much better for Terrence Steele. You also might just let him play out the season and see if you want to keep him next year. Now, DeMarcus Lawrence would have trade value. Absolutely would he be among the more coveted edges, I think, if he were healthy. Now, he's owed $5 million rest of the season. That's not that bad. The Cowboys could eat some of it if they wanted to get a pick back. But I don't know when he's going to play again. It might not be until after Thanksgiving. So you're kind of into the conditional pick range of, would you take a conditional 6th-round pick for DeMarcus Lawrence and hope it becomes like a 5th or a 4th if he plays a bunch of games and gets a bunch of sacks? I'm intrigued by that. But the injury concerns alone are going to turn off a lot of teams. Like, I think Tank Lawrence is a better football player than Arden Key, but Arden Key's healthy. So the teams might prefer the healthy guy than the hurt guy, who has no guarantee of playing this season. So will the Cowboys make a trade? 1 for yes, 0 for no. Let me know in the comments of today's show. Brandon Cooks is next up, kind of in a similar bucket as DeMarcus Lawrence here. He seems close to returning. Coming off a slow start, though, and an injury, and is owed $4 million. Now, the receiver market in general is not very good right now. It's like Mike Williams, it's injured Adam Thielen, it's Elijah Moore, it's Tyquan Thornton. Now, Brandon Cooks was not playing good football before he got hurt. I think the knee injury was a factor there. I think the overall schematics, because Mike McCarthy's lost this year, were factors too. You can sell him, but much like Tank Lawrence, you're not going to get the value you could have gotten, or thought you would have got, I should say, if he were healthy. Trayvon Diggs, who was, again, this was mentioned by ESPN, don't blame me, mentioned by Todd Archer a couple weeks ago. He has trade value. He absolutely does. He's not a good run defender, but that's probably a lesser issue than, if you got to pick one, you're going to pick the guy that can't run defend, the guy that can't cover it all. And he's not been perfect in coverage either, by the way. But he does have trade value. and he's under contract for multiple seasons. He's owed about $6 million this year. I wonder if Diggs, and a guy we'll get to here in a second, are not really trade deadline candidates unless they get blown away by a trade offer. I wonder if Diggs is let's just keep him this year, let him play, get him fully healthy, and then we can make our decision on what we're going to do with the Diggs-Bland duo, which those two guys haven't played together. The Cowboys' top three corners haven't really. It's quickly becoming, by the way, the Amari Cooper, Michael Gallup, CeeDee Lamb thing. Those guys never really got to play together either with a healthy QB. They were 9 games or something. Diggs has now played with the fully realized version of Bland, and vice versa. And then Gilmore was only here for half a year. Lewis has been banged up too. It sucks. They haven't been able to play together. Finally, it's Micah Parsons. You probably knew he'd be on here. He is about to return from his ankle injury. Good news there. I am open to having the Micah Parsons trade conversation because for a team that doesn't want to spend money, trading Micah, getting a big haul back in terms of assets, because you'd get, I think, a original Jalen Ramsey, I should say, trade package. That's all very viable, I think, if you chose to go down that path and screw around with the trade conversations. You could get a pretty big haul back. And that could help you with your draft picks if you don't want to spend money in free agency. Plus, you could still spend some of Micah's money that you wouldn't be paying him. But if you're going to do that, that should be a off-season type of move. That's not let's trade him right now because you're cutting out half your field. A bad team is not going to trade for Micah Parsons right now. But they might in the off-season, depending on what other moves they're able to make happen. And you might get a higher pick back or more picks back. There's more available options. You can increase your bidding war stuff. So I'm not trading Micah Parsons right now. We can have that conversation. We will have that conversation, though, in the offseason.